Welcome back to another book talk with Tracy. Today, I'm really excited to be talking about a little book that I wrote called Angels Watching Over Me. I actually co-wrote it with a dear friend of mine, Gil. Gil Goddard is his name. And it is his memoirs, the memoirs of Gil Goddard. There's kind of an interesting story about how this little book began, and it is little. It's not too long, so it's an easy read. But Gil and I have known each other for many years. We attend the same church, and he and his wife Betty were just really fun and friendly people, and they're an elderly couple. And Gil likes to talk. He likes to tell stories for sure. And he's had some very interesting stories about his life and things like that. So a couple of years ago, probably in the fall of 2019, something like that, Gil was over visiting. And in fact, I think he was sitting in this exact chair where I'm sitting right now. And he was telling me a story, another one of his stories. And I'd heard some of them before, but this was a new one. It was a story about some of the things that have happened in his life. And I said, Gil, that is so interesting. You need to write that down. Like, you need to record yourself telling somebody these stories because, you're getting up there and you're going to lose them. Who's going to hear about this? And he just laughed, and in his way, because he's a very jovial little fellow. He's from Quebec originally. Anyways, several months went by, and then COVID hit in March of 2020. And it probably was in late March or maybe even April of that year. Of course, we hadn't seen each other for a while then because we were all social distancing. And he phoned me up and he said, "Were you serious about writing down my story?" And I thought to myself, well, I don't really remember offering to write it. But I did mention, he needs to record it or something. And I said, well, yeah, that, let's do it. Like, let's get together and you just tell me all about your life and we'll see where it goes. So over the next several months, we met probably once a week via Zoom. So, had to teach Gil how to do that. He was 84 at the time, 85. Anyways, he's a good sport, and so we figured out how to use Zoom, and we had our weekly Zoom conversations. Some of them would be an hour long, sometimes maybe even more. And I would just say, "Tell me a story. Tell me about something," and he'd go off and tell me about something from his life. And of course, then I started transcribing those, and I had to ask him some questions to fill in some of the gaps and things. But I said, definitely, Gil, this is a book. Like, we're going to write this book together. And it came together so quickly. It was published probably within, 4 or 5 months of when we started, which is kind of amazing because, it takes longer for these things to take place than normal. But I really feel like it was just a God thing. He brought all the stories together, and so then, I wrote the first draft. I tried to write it in his point of view, and he'd read it, and we'd go back and forth. And Angels Watching Over Me came out in August of 2020. So really cool. Now, the thing about Gil that I should mention is it is his life story. He is such an upbeat fellow, amazing Christian, very strong faith, but he suffered some really amazingly tragic things in his life. One of his sons was hit by a speeding vehicle when the boy was 6, and he flew through the air, and so he lost one son that way, and then he lost another son to drug and alcohol addiction, and he's had 5 heart attacks, not even kidding, 5. He's suffered divorce. He was a single parent of 8. What? And and he was a trucker for 50 years. He's millions of miles, and so he goes on all about these stories up and down the highways of North America, from Vancouver to Florida to Toronto, back to Edmonton, and back to through Los Angeles, and just really interesting stories. And despite the tragedy, you know, he's also had cancer. Like, my goodness, he's lived a really triumphant life, I guess you could say that, because throughout all of the trials, he still is praising Jesus, you know, and he still is doing that today at 85, almost 86, coming up soon. So here's to Gil. This was a project of love, let me tell you. It wasn't something I did, you know, as a moneymaker for any or anything like that, but I just really felt like Gil's story deserved to be told. And so there it is, Angels Watching Over Me. There you can see the little truck there. And if you are interested in reading that, I would highly recommend it. You can find it on my website. And if you do go over to my website, which is tracykrauss.com, TracyKrauss.com, you'll see all my books and plays. I sure appreciate reviews. I know Gil would appreciate a review too if you happen to read his book. So that's it for this episode of Book Talk with Tracy, and I hope to see you next time. God bless.